for the Wonderbloom tour. And I watched a couple of their videos and it was really awesome. So I agreed to do it. And then the tour was canceled. So that was why we ended up making like a video collaboration instead.
Video too? I didn't see the video.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Oh,
didn't know
you
about
didn't see
that.
the
No, I didn't know. Just saw the single on Spotify. Put it on. I put on the show just this week.
Oh, I didn't even know that it was on Spotify. Yeah,
Really?
we did like a video collaboration. So I filmed my part at home and they filmed their stuff in Germany. And then the guy who I was in touch with did all this like video animation and special effects and stuff. So it looks like we're like floating around in an aquarium and then it like zooms out and we're in outer space in this like aquarium school bus thing.
That's
It's
awesome.
very cool.
Yeah.
And then Laura, I've known her for a while. She's incredible. And she was one of the collaborators on Wonderbloom. There are a few tracks that really feature her like halfway and feels like this. A lot of the drums and percussion you hear on those songs are exclusively made by Laura, just whacking her harp and doing all kinds of extended techniques and harp effects with different effects pedals and stuff. And about 2 years ago, we talked about me coming to France and us doing this sort of like record swap thing. So she recorded a bunch of stuff on my record, and then I sang on her song, the W song, for her new record, which just came out, and her video for that song just came out, which is a really, really killing song. What was the third thing you said?
It was you did this COVID thing for the Ground Up label. It was called On Your Face.
Oh,
if I'm not mistaken.
okay.
That was hilarious. I just saw it this morning.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, that I'm like, don't understand why that has not gone like insanely viral because it's so good. But so that's my really good friend James Shipp, who is a multi-instrumentalist, composer, songwriter. He back when I met him, I knew him as a vibraphonist. But then we were in a band together where he played all different kinds of percussion, vibraphone. He's also he's a pianist. He does everything, and he has this series of, I think he calls them COVID diaries or something. And they're just like he's an incredible songwriter, but he has this series of like hilarious songs, and he has a very, very witty sense of humor, and so that filters into these songs that he's doing that are like witty and, you know, relevant politically. And this one that we did together was I call it Keep the Mask On because that's the hook, but he calls it On Your Face. And it's just like a spoof on, you know, a boy meets girl during COVID times and the sexual tension of like having to keep your mask on. And it's freaking amazing. I love that video.
Best is when you pull the mask off and there's the other mask. You did that flawlessly. I don't know how you did.
That was his idea.
And
that
also,
was
yeah.
He sent me like a list of things that I needed to do, and that was at the top of the list.
The other thing too, really, there's a scene where you're like kissing the mirror, at least on the lipstick. I'm not sure how that worked out. Was that already there, or is it like on the mask?
That was also James's idea, and I was filming it myself like this, and I did it like 50 times until I got it perfectly. But yeah, I kissed the mirror first. It's like a magic trick. I kissed the mirror first, then put the mask on and made it look like it was left behind after I kissed it.
Okay, I wasn't sure if like you put the lipstick over the mask or something. It could be a look. I'm not judging you.
I'm glad it was.
All right. Speaking of music videos, you just released a stunning music video for True Minds, which you've been saying recently has become your favorite song on the record. It's quite a visual collage. I was wondering if you could just give me a quick walkthrough of it, because there's like mishmash of like archival footage, Instagram photos, just you in your room.
Yeah. So that was a collaboration between myself and a director, cinematographer in Spain named Jep Jorba. From Poca Broma Productions. And he also did the music video with me for Feels Like This in Spain. That was the last time I was in Spain visiting Mike. We set up that video shoot, and it was done with a really incredible dancer named Helena Gispert. And I was so blown away by her that I reached out to Jeff and I said, let's make another video. This was another like making lemonade situation because of COVID. So I was supposed to go back there and make a video, and obviously it fell through because of COVID. So he and I started talking and we were like, well, we could still do something. You film yourself at home, I'll edit it. And the original idea that he put out there for True Minds was that I would just send him a bunch of archival footage, like you said, of stuff that I felt like resonated with the song or resonated with like the expression of who I am as an artist and stuff like that. So I sent him hours of archival footage and also found footage. So just like objects in my apartment. And I did these little stop motion things where I'd like put it on the rug and move it, take a picture, move it, take a picture. So the first version of the video was mostly just that stuff. And then he said, I think we need some B-roll of you singing along to the song and moving around your apartment and stuff. And I just went nuts. Like I did, you know, I had a folder that was like an hour of me up on the roof, and then an hour of me in this room, and then an hour of me in that room. And I had so much fun doing it. There was one night where I opened up a bottle of tequila and I had to put it like in a different folder where I was like, this is the crazy tequila folder. This is the fun, colorful folder. This, you know, so I sent him like tons and tons and tons of stuff, and it sort of transformed the vibe of the video into this other direction that's like girl cooped up in her apartment during COVID, mixed with some archival footage, mixed with some found objects that are morphing. And I really like how it turned out. It's like kind of random and all over the place, but so am I, and so is my music, and so is that song. So I was really into how it turned out.
Now, I'm getting a little distracted. Speaking of your room, there's some beautiful paintings on the wall. I was wondering if you could just walk through them. Because I understood
sure.
You're also a painter. I don't know did you make those?
Ooh, these are all made by people that I know. None of them are mine. I'm not that good of a painter. I do like more modern kind of stuff. But this is, I'm pointing with my cursor and you can't see it. This is my husband, and it was painted by the cellist in the Ithaca Quartet, whose name is Andrew Yee. These two my dad got for me in high school because I was really into this painter named Tiffany O'Brien, who's from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, as am I.
Yeah.
I particularly love this one. It's called Babies Shouldn't Play with Nail Guns, and it's a baby holding a nail gun. And then this is made by my stepmom, Carrie Stevens, and it's like basically my husband and I as Simpsons characters. It was a wedding gift.
That's awesome.
Her. Yeah,
that's kind of funny because I was going to ask you too, because I know that Titan Arum influenced the name of the album. There's an episode of The Simpsons that parodies the flower. They call it the Sumatran century flower. Have you heard of it?
No.
So the whole joke is like they're out the botanical garden, and it's instead of 10 years, it takes a whole century to bloom. And then there's this giant stink cloud, and everyone goes nuts.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You hadn't heard of that? No.
Mm-mm.
All right, well, let's talk about the flower then, because Titan Arum, you've talked about it being a symbol of the fruition of growth. Like it takes this decade and becomes this beautiful thing, but at the end of it, it smells like a rotting corpse. Surely music doesn't smell like a corpse. What made you go with that giant flower instead of like, I don't know.
I mean, there's no real comparable giant flower. Like that's the biggest one. I love the color of it and the shape and the story of it, like how hard it works for, I love the fact that it blooms only for 24 hours, maybe 48 tops, and then it's gone and it has to begin again, because it takes the ego out of it. Like this flower is working so hard for this fleeting moment of glory, and then it doesn't care that that's all it is, and then it's over and it begins anew. As far as the rotting flesh part, I think I just thought that was like an extra fun. As you can see, I have like a dark sense of humor from the baby with nail gun painting, and I don't know, I just like that kind of twisted, extra dark ending to the beautiful flower. You wait for this moment for it to like bloom and smell like a beautiful flower, and it's like, fuck you, I smell like a rotting corpse. Can I curse on this?
I can edit it later. It's fine. So you also channeled that darkness in the record, I understand. For example, I Wish and Good Stuff, and more poignantly on You Didn't Know and Heather's Letters to Your Mother. There's a dark sense that comes through, and you find the beauty in that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, you said it very poignantly. I think a lot of the songs on Wonderbloom are about taking that darkness and holding it up to the light and seeing the beauty in it, kind of like a kaleidoscope, which you see come to life in the music video for Feels Like This. Everything is filmed through a kaleidoscope lens. And, you know, a lot of those songs were written from a place of struggling with the darkness and then overcoming it by finding the beauty in it, or overcoming it by maybe not even finding the beauty, but just kind of proudly holding it up to the light. And you mentioned I Wish, which was a song that was written in this room. I was in a horrible mood. I was struggling with something emotionally. And then I decided to set a challenge for myself to find a way to write a song that would make me want to get up and dance and like get over my bad mood and get up and dance around. And I was thinking about songs that make me feel like that. And then I started to write a bass line, like a funky bass line. And then I took my kind of self-deprecating, self-loathing lyrical narrative that was running through my head and tried to put a more lighthearted and kind of humorous spin on it. And it's easy to do that when you blend it with accompaniment that is lighthearted and dancey. It automatically changes the color of the narrative, which I did a couple times on this record and really enjoyed taking, instead of doing the brooding, moody guitar stuff, to take it in a completely different direction, like a dance song.
Well, there's still some brooding guitar stuff. It's not completely electronic.
Yeah.
So I guess the other question I have too is which did you decide was going to be the danceable? Which did you decide was going to be the somber? Because you mentioned a lot. This is the first record you feel like you could dance to, but you often sway during performances, whether it be Regina or Imperfect Animals. It doesn't have to be a danceable song. You're just kind of rocking to the beat. Is that different than this record in that regard? It's like, because there's still the central essence of you can groove to it.
Yeah, I think, you know, originally when I set out to write the music for Wonderbloom, and when I was looking for producers and co-producers and engineers and stuff like that, I was looking for someone to capture something very vulnerable and intimate. Like I had a vision for the project that was the total opposite of how it turned out. It was sort of like, once Nick Hard and I started working on this music and this record, it was as if the experience and the music had a life of its own that just took off, and all we could do was follow it. And I've always wanted to make kind of a funkier sounding record. I didn't think this was going to be the time, but it just like, it blew me away that the current came through so strong. And it was sort of like, once we opened the door, there was no turning back. And it also, this like following that current of, you know, heavy grooves and funky bass lines and the synth world that we kind of went into, specifically doing day-long sessions with people like Justin Stanton and Jason Lindner and some guys out in LA. I could send you a whole list of names of all the people that played keyboard on the record. Jeff Babco, Bobby Sparks. I'm going to leave people out. My brother, Bill Stevens. Jacob played some. Yeah.
You're probably sick of hearing his name in the same breath as you, aren't
you? Who?
Jacob Collier.
Never. No,
really?
I love
okay.
Jacob. No.
It feels like he comes in every single interview.
It feels like what?
It feels like he comes up in every single interview you have. I wasn't sure if that was Something I should stay away
Oh.
from?
I mean, that just happens, when there are like notable collaborators, it's just going to come up. Just
Yeah.
like if I had if there was some horrible crime associated with my name, I'm sure that would come up in every interview too.
I guess I'll take this opportunity then to ask you about. So, another thing that just came out like a month ago was Jesse Volume 3. You featured on 2 of those tracks for that album. I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you what are the sessions like? Because I know that's the album's being released in series. They're all in one year and they're being put out serially. So there's a whole bunch of songs from that time you're recording. What was it like?
Yeah. So volume 3, I'm trying to think of what the 2 tracks were. Was it He Won't Hold You? No.
Yeah, it was.
Sleeping on My Dreams, and then something where it was like a
Yeah,
more choral thing.
yeah. Sleeping on My Dreams and He Won't Hold You. Yeah,
He Won't
is what I have written down.
Yeah. And then I think that maybe something that I sang was also sampled on one other track on that record too. But He Won't Hold You, it was like me and a group of other singers that we were just like hanging out. And it was Michael Mayo, who also sang on Wonderbloom.
Yeah.
Julia, was her last name. I'll email it to you.
Isn't it on your website, the whole list?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was like just a bunch of us hanging out at the studio, and then he was like, "Do you guys want to sing on something?" And we were like, "Yeah, sure." And then we just did it, and then it was over. And my husband was there too, and he sang on that one as well.
Huh?
But for Sleeping on My Dreams, that was something where in the very, very final hours of Jacob, like literally had, I think, a weekend to do all the editing and mixing and pulling the final odds and ends and like choosing the tracks and stuff of his record before he delivered all the tracks. He texted me in a panic and he was like, "Becca, can you help me pick out which tracks I'm like having a hard time and I don't know what to cut?" And so we spent like hours and hours listening through all this stuff. And then it was sort of like an afterthought. We were listening to Sleeping on My Dreams and he was like, "It needs like another timbre, another color." And I was like, "I'm here." And he was like, "Oh shit, will you do it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I have like, a little recording set up here. So I spent a day tracking like 50 layers of vocals and I sent them all to him. And then he quickly went through and picked the ones he wanted. And he had me do similar to what I had Michael Mayo do on Good Stuff. Jacob had me sort of take on these different characters so that each vocal that I sent to him had a totally different sound and character. Like I think he posted something about it on his page, but there was like drunk uppity mom, and then like proud dad. I mean, there was like a million different characters, and it was. You can check it out on his page. I think he did a post of like where he soloed some of them, and he's laughing.
Which one did you settle on?
He used like 50 of them. It's like a choir.
Oh, I thought it was like he settled on Umpity Mom and that was it. So he used
Mm.
all of them. Wow.
I think he used most of them.
Okay, wow.
There's tons and tons and tons of vocals.
Yeah.
Easterlin is her last name, Julia Easterlin.
Okay.
Sometimes in interviews, my brain will just go blank and I forget the most bizarre things.
I'm doing the same thing right now. You'll notice I'm stuttering as I ask you these questions.
It's I haven't
It's
noticed
cool. I just have I'll be honest, I have quite a list of questions here, so I'm trying to juggle in my brain because you've really done a lot this year, despite everything. It's really impressive.
I don't feel that way, so thank you. I'm
really?
glad to hear it. Yeah.
Cool. That's really interesting because then I'll ask you another question. So I'll be honest, actually, I reached out. So I'm part of the jazz ensemble here at Boston College called BOP, and I understand you had training in jazz vocal composition. So I actually asked some of the other singers if they had any questions for you. One of them came from Erin Abelli. She's a junior here, and she and our vocal director, Karen Sayer, would want to know, how do you stay motivated, inspired during quarantine?
One of the most inspiring things that I've done during quarantine is to teach, specifically teaching songwriting, one-on-one lessons and master classes. I find the give and take and the human connection during a time when that's kind of sparse, you're just like sitting at home, you don't see anyone. And so being able to connect with other songwriters and like be there for them during a time when they're stuck or the world is getting them down, and that vehicle for self-expression can be a very healing, lifting force, has been inspiring for me, because then I'm obviously like dealing with the same struggles. It's the same thing that through your entire career, no matter where you are in your career, it's always the same struggles. And so that's the beautiful thing about teaching, is that you're telling someone how to get to the other side of their stuff, and then later that day maybe you're writing and then you're dealing with the same exact things, and you're like, okay, well, I should take my own advice. So yeah, teaching has been a very inspiring and lifting force. Meditation, I've finally gotten, I'm actually sitting on my pillow right now. I've finally turned it up a little bit, and I've been meaning to commit to that more, and I think it's helped me to be home and to settle into some kind of schedule. And having more regularity in general, like being home and not feeling like every other day I have to say goodbye to my husband for 2 months and then readjust. And like that's that, being on the road and being in a different airport every day and sleeping for 3 hours a night, like it's a beautiful life and it's what I wanted, but it's so exhausting. So being the you know, obviously this year has been horrible for musicians and their careers and stuff, but the upside is the rest and recuperation and the time to look inward and really look at your whole life, not just your artistic life, and see like, well, what kind of person do I want to be? Like music and career life aside, how do I want to feel every day, you know?
So yeah, basically self-reflection. That's interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know another thing you said, that part of what keeps you going during this time is helping others, reaching out, inspiring them in turn. I was wondering, is that's probably very rewarding, I mean, especially during the teaching. How's that differ from your other teaching experiences, the whole remote system? Because you've been doing this for a while. You volunteer at the local prison. You've done camps with children. This seems to be more, you're reaching out to your fans more this time around.
Totally. I mean, I'm used to my master classes being something that's like on an off day when I'm on the road. I'll go to a university or a conservatory and sit in a room and speak to human beings who are there responding and breathing the same air as me. Obviously, there's a learning curve when you take that and you put it into the Zoom environment. I remember back in like April or May when I first started to put my teaching studio together, it took me a minute to get used to the lag. Even with perfect connection, there's always like, you know, especially when someone's playing something for you, or if you're trying to play something at the same time, it's like the lag is very noticeable, but also nobody has perfect internet, or it's rare. And so there's often times like I'll say something and it takes 2 seconds for me to see it register in their face. And something about that lag mentally like is exhausting after it happens for 4 hours. And also I was reading, I can't remember where I read this. It was a long time, like towards the beginning of quarantine. I remember reading something about how there's like a Zoom hangover that people are experiencing, where like they're spending all day staring at a computer screen, and their brain is thinking that it's real, like that we're two real human beings having a conversation, but another part of your body knows that it's not. And so there's this like conflict that's happening. You can come in. Anyway, what was I saying? Just that there's like a lag also physically and emotionally. I find that sometimes teaching over Zoom can be even more draining than teaching in person, because when you're teaching in person, you're getting more of the energy off of the room. Whereas especially with like Zoom master classes and stuff, you see people, they're kind of checked out a little bit, and like sometimes people even turn their video off, or you're not hearing any of the sound because everyone's muted. And it's harder, like I'm a very sensitive person and I get a lot out of the energy in a room, and it's harder for me to tap into that. So I find that 2 hours of teaching on Zoom feels like 6 hours of teaching in person. Same thing with performing. An hour performing on Zoom feels like 10 hours performing to a room of people. So that's taken me some getting used to, but I think it's just, you have to kind of change something in your brain and know that there are people there, they want you to succeed. And the absence of sound at the end of a song it's just funny. Like, it doesn't have to be like devastating, it's just funny. It's like so quiet when you finish playing a song, and then you start to see like little pictures of hands clapping sort of trickling through 10 seconds later, because there's the lag between the computers, and then it takes the person a second to go up here and like type the thing and find the hand, and it's like by the time it comes you've already started the next song. So you just have to like get over it, you know.
That's funny. All right. So I guess I should move on to the record now, after all. This
Sure.
is Wonderbloom feature. I'm playing it a lot, and the song that's my favorite is Charlemagne. It's probably a weird choice, but I was wondering if you tell me about that song. Because one particular thing I wanted to ask you is it a continuation of the themes of royalty from Regina? Because it's got the whole Emperor Charlemagne and his queen separating. Maybe a stretch, but could you tell me about that?
Yeah. So that is a song that I wrote with Alan Hampton, who I just adore. He's one of my favorite songwriters on the planet, one of my favorite human voices, singers on the planet, and super killing bass player, guitar player, plays with Andrew Bird all the time, and he used to be the bass player in Gretchen Parlato's band, and also plays bass in a group that I'm in with Taylor Eigsty and Gretchen and Eric Harland. He's an amazing human being, and we've done a fair amount of writing together, and I knew that I wanted to have him do some co-writing on one of the songs on Wonderbloom. So I came to LA and we started working on that song. And when we first started to work on it, we were thinking about, this would have been back in maybe 2017 or 18 when we first started working on it. And we were thinking about the political climate. We were thinking about our president and his behavior. And the original lyric was sort of like taking this headstrong leader and writing something that feels like it could either be a conversation between the people and this leader that doesn't seem to care about the people, or it could be a conversation between two lovers. And then we worked on the song and we started to lean the narrative and the lyrics more in the direction of like just between two people. It got less Trumpy and more kind of universal. But the original like approach to it was slightly more political.
It became much more mellow then.
Yeah,
it's like almost like a lullaby. I could like fall asleep to that song. It's beautiful.
I'm glad. Yeah, and I think Nick did a really good job with the production on that. He really followed that direction of like the mellow kind of synthy, like retro Beach Boysy kind of vibe, and also this is what happens. My brain goes blank when I'm in an interview.
Take your time. It's good.
Yeah, it'll come to me as soon as I stop thinking about it.
That guess we move on, I guess. Then speaking of songwriting, I have another question from a BOP member. Her name is Bridget Brady. She's another junior in the vocal ensemble. She wanted to know, when composing, do you do lyrics first or melody or instrumental? I know usually it's the latter, but
Hmm.
there's the one time with the Muse where you had the lyrics first. Is there any particular dynamic in Wonderbloom?
So this is interestingly my most commonly asked question when I teach a master class and I first open the room up to questions. This is often the first question that comes up. Um, and my answer is not straightforward because it changes over time. I would say that my earliest approach to songwriting would have been like in my teenage years. Um, of course, the name just popped into my head that I was trying to remember before. This always happens. On Charlemagne, Josh Meese did really incredible synth parts that like glued the whole thing together. Okay. Oh, and Bill Campbell's drumming was like, we had three different drummers play on that song, and then it was like, oh, it has to be Bill. And then we had Bill do it, and then it was like fixed everything. So when I was like in my angsty early teens, my writing process would have looked like sit down with a guitar and a feeling, and then noodle around maybe in like an alternate tuning until I find something that matches the feeling, and then loop it and loop it. Maybe start kind of improvising wordless melodies, maybe with an implied like vowel or stuff that almost sounds like words but isn't quite in English, and then eventually that blooms into something that's coherent words, and then kind of massaging it until it means something. So that would have been like my earliest style, and that's what feels most natural to me. But following what my earliest style is leads to an outcome that sounds a certain way to me. And as soon as I realized that, you know, in my 20s or whatever, I started to mess around with it, you know, just like when you're at the gym and you notice that one of your muscles is overdeveloped, then you switch to a different part of your body and have a more balanced workout. It's the same thing with songwriting for me. If I work on stuff that doesn't come naturally to me, then it makes me feel like a more well-rounded songwriter, and it also makes me feel way more productive, way more focused. Like when I start with for example, a theme or a character development rather than noodling on guitar first. If I start with something more structured, like sitting down and journaling about a character that I'm dreaming up, and journaling about like every aspect of its life and what it's wearing and where it's from and what it's feeling and what it wants. And I really get into the nitty gritty of all that stuff before I start to really get into the lyric. It comes so much faster. The time is spent much more effectively and more productively.
Does that apply too when you're borrowing lyrics from a poet? Like you did a lot of Shakespeare recently on Regina and on this album for True Minds. Then also
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned Jane Tyson Clement. You seems to be a very big influence. Said 5 pieces of
Yeah.
music. Response to criticism was just on the record. But in the past, you've also added your own, like in Tillery. You take two of her poems, but added some of your own lyrics. When you're doing an approach, when do you know what to take away? What do you know what to add?
When I'm doing a setting of a poem, it feels like a vacation for me. Like those are the quickest songs I think I've ever written, is when I'm not responsible for the lyric, because lyrics are the part of the process that I tend to struggle with most. Melodies come to me quickly. Guitar stuff, it sort of feels like I'm just writing a million melodies, you know? Whereas lyric, I really obsess over every word. So when I find a poem that I like, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just read it until the spoken word starts to bloom into a melody, and then the melody starts to cue me what I want the accompaniment to be like, and it all just falls into place in this really beautiful way. Tillery is an interesting example because I'd been working on that song for literally years before I decided to incorporate the poetry of another poet other than myself. I just started to get this sense that I didn't have the tools that I needed to finish the song. It was a song that I was writing to honor the life of a friend of mine whose name was Kenya Tillery. And I had tried like 6 different approaches and nothing was right and nothing worked. And then finally, and I had this melody in mind and I had the number of syllables chosen. I just didn't have the words. And I opened up this book that I'd never opened before. It was a Jane Tyson Clement book that is sitting on my shelf. And my dad had given it to me for Christmas like 1 or 2 years prior. And I opened up the book, and there, just the first page I opened it to was the same number of syllables that I was looking for, and on a subject matter that fit perfectly with what I was looking for. So I saw that as a sign, and I was like, okay, it's done. Like, I don't have to make this about myself anymore. Somebody else did it. And committing to that actually led to this really amazing 10-year long collaboration with this poet who wasn't alive, but I've done 5 more settings of her songs and was commissioned by her publishing company to do these settings with videos that you can see online.
And that just won an award, correct?
Filmed in this room, and really amazing family. What's that?
And that just won an award too, right? Silver at the Independent Publisher or Book Awards.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, the book that we worked on together. So it was another a book of her poetry with a foreword written by me and commentary throughout written by me, and that won an award. And it's sort of paired. That book was sort of paired with the videos that were filmed in here.
I think also Providential, that came out in December, and you received your original book of poetry in December. That's kind of cool, in my opinion.
Oh.
Another thing I want to ask you while on the subject of songs like Tillery, I noticed that there are few songs you seem to re-record. A lot of them are by Jane Tyson Clement. You did Tillery twice, first for Animal, then with the band of the same name. Also, same with I Asked, and then you just re-recorded Response to Criticism. And then even earlier before that, you recorded The Riddle. When you're choosing to reinterpret a song, reinvent it, what goes into that decision-making process?
Tillery, the song, started to come together when Tillery the band was first realizing that it could be a band. Like, it was the 3 of us. We were just hanging out, sitting around Rebecca Martin's dinner table, and we were just hanging out as friends. And I think it was Rebecca that said, like, let's sing something together. And it was around that time that I was starting to finally finish the song after years of working on it. And so even though I was writing it for what would be the next Becca Stevens band record, Perfect Animal, it was on my mind and in my fingers. And so at that time, I taught it to them as well. And then when we first played a gig, Rebecca and Gretchen and I, someone had commented on a video of us practicing and said, it's like Girls Gone Mild, like Girls Gone Wild, but we were just like chilling so hard that it was Girls Gone Mild. And so for the first like 6 months of us being a band, that's what we went by, Girls Gone Mild. And then we got a proper gig at Stanford and decided that we needed a more serious name for our band. And Rebecca said, what about that song Tillery? And I hadn't told them at that point what the song was about and what it meant to me. And so I got kind of choked up because I was thinking, oh, Kenya would have been so honored to have a band like that named after her. And it just felt like the perfect name for that group. And so the song Perfect Animal, the group, and the re-recording of it on the Tillery record all kind of happened around the same time, even though they were released at different times. The Riddle was something that Matt Pearson, who produced Weightless, we had talked about whether or not, because T by C, my first record, was released independently, and it didn't make a very big splash because I released it myself. So it was a conversation early on when we were picking songs for Weightless, this idea of like re-releasing some of the songs from my first record. And that one popped into my head because we were playing it so differently at that point. Like our live arrangement as a band, our live arrangement of that song was so different than how it was on the first record. And so I really wanted to include it.
Is that going to apply to Wonderbloom when you go touring this? Because a lot of it, you said, is very highly produced, and you kind of put that caution to the wind, usually writing in consideration of ukulele, the charango. But this time around, you just went nuts. So are we going to see a giant ensemble on stage, or is it going to continue to be a small group of four, maybe?
We did a little bit of touring before the world shut down.
Yeah.
And I did add a fifth member to the band.
Huh?
His name is Jan Esbra.
Who I talked to over email.
Yes,
He was
exactly.
very nice guy.
He's the best. And he was doing everything on the road. He was tour managing us, he was selling the merch, and he was playing guitar in the band. So, which really freed me up a lot to move around more, and also it made it so that we could cover two of the different guitar parts simultaneously instead of me feeling like it was all my responsibility. So that means it was Michelle Willis on keys, which was a handful for her because some of the songs have like multiple keyboard lines interweaving. Jordan Perlson on drums, and we added in some trigger elements so that he could be playing drums and then hit a trigger pad that would have like a trigger of my voice, for example. On good stuff, there's like the ooh, ah stuff, and so he would like play it on the trigger while he's playing the drums. Sometimes do some like vocal pads and stuff, which we were already doing a little bit of in Regina. And then Chris Tordini, the plan was to have him also touring with a little Moog bass that either he or Michelle would play, and that he also has some crazy pedals that he was putting on his electric bass to make it feel more like some of the synth bass on the record. So yeah, we were really doing a great job starting to flesh all that out. But then COVID made it so I was forced to figure out ways to play the songs by myself, which went from like challenging to super challenging. And while I was in Spain this past trip, I made 5 more videos with Jep. So Jep, who I really wanted to make the video with, that I really wanted to make another video with Helena and him, and then we did True Minds instead, as I was saying earlier. I managed to make it back and made another video with Helena for the song Halfway, and we also did 3 acoustic solo songs. And I bring this up because these like solo acoustic arrangements of the songs was like full throttle challenge for me to take all that production and condense it down into. So hopefully those you'll see soon. There's a Tiny Desk, a ground up Tiny Desk video that's coming out soon. That's
cool.
Me playing Heather's Letters to Her Mother by myself in Spain. And then Chris Tordini added his bass part from Brooklyn. And then Brad Meldau added a piano part from the Netherlands.
Let's talk about that song. I wanted to unpack it. You just did, I saw you did a video for Guitar World teaching it. You've been doing a lot on different interviews. And despite that, it's a very heavy song. I'm surprised you have the endurance to keep playing it. I understand it's a challenge from David Crosby. It's about the Charlottesville protest that went awry with Heather Heyer. Rest in peace. But one thing that I can't seem to find out about is what inspired you to take the epistolary approach? What made you choose letters instead of a direct conversation?
I picture it being text messages, actually. Like I picture them being these quick little conversations between Heather and her mother, just like letting her know how she's doing and what's going on in her life. And I think when I was working on this song, I get this kind of it's like this is developed more in my older years. Like as I get older and as I write more, I'm learning to listen to these kind of voices that are basically a product of me like communicating with my embodiment of a muse of whatever the song is. So for Regina, that voice would have been Regina, And for Heather's letters, that voice would be Heather, or whatever energy I have in my mind around her. And so in the process of writing, I put her or that energy on a pedestal. And if anything that I'm doing does not serve that, it's sort of like I get everything goes silent. That's how I know that I'm not on the right path. It sort of feels like the energy that I need to get the answers from is just not responding. And then if it's working, things start to tingle and buzz, and then doors open, and ideas come through, or colors come through, or whatever. And when I was working on that song, there's a lot of silence, a lot of, I try something, silence. I try something else, silence. And so I started to get the feeling, I was like, I'm barking up the wrong tree. I'm getting into something where I don't belong. I don't have the right, and I think if David hadn't kind of challenged me to do it and told me, like, if anyone can do this, you can, like he had really encouraged me, I probably would have given up, which is not like me. I tend to stick with things until I find a way through, but it was very challenging. And then as I was doing my research and reading everything that I could about her, her mom came up, because her mother started the Heather Heyer Foundation. And I started to think a lot about her mother, and I started to think about the experience through her mother's eyes. And that's what sparked the idea of having things be more like Heather speaking to her mother, rather than me speaking about Heather, or me speaking about the experience or my views of the experience. I wanted it to come from Heather to someone who she knows and loves, and who she's just being, everyday conversation with. And when I stumbled upon that, doors flew open, the energy turned on, and I was like, okay, I'll go with this.
Has her family reached out to you about the song? Have they heard it?
No, I mean, maybe they've heard it, I don't know, but I haven't heard from anyone. There was a live stream that I did a few months ago where the guy who was running it knew her mother and invited her, but I don't know that she wasn't there. It was like a last minute invitation. She wasn't able to make it. And I don't know if she knew that I was playing that song. I'd really like to be connected with her, but it's a sensitive thing. So I would never push it.
Of course. Let's transition to a more lighter tone. I wanted to ask you about Halfway. You mentioned it earlier, and Laura used. It's definitely an interesting song, beautiful, probably my second favorite on the album. But one thing that caught my attention was you told World Cafe that it was a hybrid of two very different songs, Radiohead's There, and MIA's Bird Flu. I can hear it now that I know that, but they're so radically opposed. I was wondering, is that approach you took with Wonderbloom to challenge yourself? Because you simply described True Minds as TLC meets Aphex Twin, also very different artists.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I used that approach of making a hybrid between two opposing songs, like for every song on the record, but it was something that I did a few times. For True Minds, that was not an initial plan or thought that I had. It was more like it arose during the production process, where it was like, whoa, this section really has a TLC vibe, let's go full throttle. And this vampy drum and bass section, let's go with more of the Aphex Twin vibe. But with Halfway and Feels Like This, which I wrote with two people named Talia Billig and Jacob Bergson, we got together, and in order to, like, the setup was that Talia was doing sort of top line stuff with me, and Jacob was doing more programming and production. And so his role, it really helped for me to come to the table with some sort of production vision. And so in that setting, it was like I would offer a seed that was maybe a little voice memo recording from my phone, and then an idea of a hybrid of two different production elements. And so for Halfway, it was like I had this, it was just like a simple voice memo of me going, find it in the darkness, find it in the light, that I'd like come up with while I was riding a bicycle. And then I said, I want this to be the tribal percussion of MIA's Bird Flu meets the like
Reverb of there.
Yes, totally.
That's my guess. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say though, for all your talk about having trouble with lyrics, that's one of the most profound things you've written. I gotta say, the way you write poetry almost seems flawlessly good. Just beautiful, beautiful poetry. You have a rare ability to capture emotion in lyric.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next question is a bit of a minor one, but it's an interesting footnote in your personal history. You talk a lot about the Toon Mammals, your family band, from like when you were a little toddler. The record Too Cute to Spank just turned 30 this year. Looking back, how does it make you feel?
I love that record. I have let's try to see if I have one I could show you. The tape is up here somewhere. Hold on. So you can see the back here. Here we go. So this was in 1989. This was the debut record. So I would have been, was it 89?
The website says 87.
87. Yeah. You're right. So I would have been 2 or 3.
Okay.
And then this also says copyright 87, but that's not possible. This would have been like 1990. Too Cute to Spank. Da, 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 da. So there I am in the middle. So at that point I was 5 or 6. And I have very fond memories of making these records. Like everything that I remember, I loved being in the studio at that age. I loved working on music. Like my dad made it very serious but very fun at the same time. So I don't have like any sort of, traumatic associations with music at that age. It was all like empowering and it was my favorite thing to do. And these songs are brilliant. It's like I loved them when I was a kid and I love them even more now. They're really, really funny. Kind of genius funny in the way that James Shipp's songs are genius funny. Like there's like layers and upon layers of genius humor in them. And I'm very proud of my first band.
You don't seem to have left your mind either. You can do the palindrome part of My Boy Bill Talks backwards perfectly.
You've really done your homework.
I didn't want to bother you with any questions you already answered because I don't want to waste your time with like for example, the question about lyrics. I'd probably miss the mark on that. I try to come to these interviews in a way that you're not answering the same questions over and over again, so you can really get something new.
I'm impressed.
So I do my homework
You've done and preparation. It's awesome.
I hope it doesn't come off as creepy.
No, not at all. If anything, it's a drag to do an interview where someone's like, "So, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Really?"
I don't want to be that guy. No.
So then I don't feel like I have to do all the work because you've done all the work.
Okay. Ooh, this is a bit of a miscellaneous question. Your primary guitar seems to be a Strender Stratocaster named Xerxes. I was wondering how to get the name.
I'll tell you, it was the tour manager on. Actually, he's a Snarky Puppy tour manager, but he was tuning guitars on the David Crosby tour on this Lighthouse band tour. You can see there's me and Mike and David and Michelle. So TJ Abonizio has done a lot of road managing for Snarky, and he came on that tour just to tune guitars for me and Michael. And at that time, we had the idea. Well, Michael, I think, was the one who was covering headstocks of anyone who wasn't endorsing him, because it was like, why play with David Crosby in front of thousands of people and endorse someone who's not endorsing you? And so he would just cover it with tape and write something else there. And so TJ said, well, why don't we do a new name for your Fender? And this was a guitar that David actually gave me. Oh. And he said, what kind of name should we give it? And I was like, definitely like a hot, strong female name. And And then TJ, it's sort of inappropriate, but TJ was thinking about the South Park episode.
Okay.
If you know it, you know
I
it.
have not watched South Park. I would not.
Well, that's where the name came from.
Okay.
Xerxes.
I'll look it up.
Okay.
Okay,
Have fun.
Okay. Recording was very fun. You have a whole document on your Instagram of the recording process. And there's one photo that caught my eye. It also appears in the True Minds video. You're lying on the floor on a pillow. There's a microphone hanging above you, trying to capture a sleepy sound. What song was that? What were you? Is there any like
That
other extended techniques like that on the record?
Oh
There's
yeah.
another one where you're just screaming your mind out onto a Bayer dynamic.
Yes. Yeah. So the laying on the back one was for lately I haven't been enough. Low on Love. And that was something that, like, when I did the home demo of that one, before we were in the studio, I was in this room and I was laying down. I was sad. I think I had been crying or something, and the demo was like kind of half-assed and just like barely singing with a little bit of gravel in my voice. And Nick was obsessed with it, and he was like, I wish we could use it, but there's a bunch of background noise, and it's I think I'd used like the internal microphone of my computer or something. It sounded horrible. And he was like, but I want to find this color again. And how do we find this color again? And so I said, well, I was tired and I was laying down and I wasn't trying very hard. And so we had me sitting, and then that didn't, and then we had me laying down, and then on my stomach. And then I think finally we got it laying down with a handheld mic, so that it was, I can't remember if we used a handheld mic or if we used the condenser in front of my face, but definitely the laying down helped for that one. And then for I Will Avenge You, we had the idea that if I felt physically free, like I didn't have to be in front of a condenser microphone and I'm like singing in front of a handheld mic in the way that I would while I'm performing live, that it would free me up and inspire me to like scream and rock out more and kind of blow the mic out. So I used the biodynamic for that, and just like I was in this soundproof like meat locker, because there was construction downstairs from where we were recording, so I couldn't be in the main room. So it was crazy. This thing was like airtight, and between takes I had to open the door and get oxygen in there, but it was like, it kind of added to the beauty of it, because I was like sweaty and screaming in a microphone. It was awesome. And then also, response to criticism, I tracked myself in the control room at a low volume with the sound coming through the speakers, no headphones, and a handheld mic. And Nevermind, I tracked in the control room, same thing, music coming through the speakers at a low volume, sitting on the couch, like in Lotus with my eyes closed. And Nick was engineering, and I was just like, do another one. I was like in a really kind of Zen zone. It felt good to be in the room on that one for some reason. But yeah, there were tons of different approaches depending on the song. Some things I end up just recording at home because I want to be at home, and depends on the song.
All right, then. I think I just have one more question for you then. Well, this is something I ask everyone. It doesn't have to be recent, it doesn't have to be for a while, but what music are you currently listening to?
Ooh, I've been pretty predominantly listening to, like, when I'm actively listening to something with headphones, it's usually a podcast. But my husband and I just moved the record player to our kitchen, which means we're like starting the day making tea and coffee and sitting on the couch and listening to a record while our brains start to warm up. And it's so nice to just put on a record and listen from start to finish. The other day we were listening to Stevie Wonder, and there were some classical records that we were rocking out on. I can't remember. I think it was Mahler. and we listened to Pimp a Butterfly from start to finish the other day. We started it in the morning, and then I think we listened to it again at night when we were making dinner. Yeah, I'll leave you with those three.
Cool. Are you sure that's it?
Of what I've been listening to?
Yeah. I mean, you got a whole shelf right there. I'm kind of like,
Well, these are all.
I'm a little skeptical, honestly.
Those are all my records up
Wait,
there.
that's all you?
That's all me.
No.
I mean, there's like from here to here, it's like all one CD, and here to here, it's all one CD, and there to there. You know, it's like multiples. Down there are all my friends' records. If you really want like a snapshot into some stuff that I've been checking out, I could make you a playlist.
That'd be cool, yeah.
And then you share it with the interview.
Okay. The only reason I don't mean to insult you when I ask that question. It's just this record seems to come from so many directions. So many different people came in and out. I'm just surprised that's the drop list. Very brief, interesting. I guess that's another thing I could ask you, because you say you say you listen to a lot of pop music, and your music is very far from that dynamic. Certainly, there's definitely a bunch of other influences coming in. Who do you have in mind when you're making the record?
Depends on the song. There was no one thing. Like what? I mean, I have people who like I own everything that they've ever done, and I've listened to their records millions of times. Like Radiohead and Bjork and Joni Mitchell and Fiona Apple. I mean, these are all like people that I obsessively listened to in high school, you know? And then as I got a little older, I went through an Irish music obsession, and then a West African music obsession, and then certain artists, certain records I'll listen to from start to finish over and over and over again. But I also go through these long periods where I'm not really listening to music all day. I'm doing other stuff. I'm listening to podcasts obsessively and like cramming information in my brain. And this hasn't been, aside from when we moved the record player into the kitchen, this hasn't been a time of, this has been sort of a period of not listening to a whole lot of music, especially because I just came from Spain where I was all day long working on music. So the last thing I want to do is like actively listen to a record from start to finish. I mean, sometimes I'll go on Spotify and check people out, but it's more like I'm listening to a song and then going to another artist and listening to a song and kind of taking notes and seeing what I like. I mean, I could tell you some of that stuff I've been doing. Juana Molina was one that I was checking out her records on Spotify. I'm like really into her. I was listening to her a lot in Spain and sharing her records with Mike. Yeah, she comes up first. Juana Molina. Bothy Band is something I listened to a lot as a kid with my family, and I was playing them for Mike. I've been listening to a lot of blues, Ma Rainey, Robert Johnson, a little bit of Dirty Projectors. I see Radiohead here, Andy Irvine and Paul Brady, more Irish music. I can go into my songs that inspire me playlist, and we've got tons of hip hop. I've got a Pointer Sisters song, Dee Entword, Far Side, Nina Simone, Danny Brown, The Gap Band, Gillian Welch, Betty Carter, Led Zeppelin, Elliott Smith, Fleetwood Mac, Jeff Buckley, Snoop Dogg, D'Angelo. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It's like once I go into that can of worms, it's like I could talk about it all day.
A very well-rounded list, solid list. I like it. Yeah. I like to hear that because a lot of music today doesn't really have that open-mindedness. So I try to look for that in my show, find musicians who think outside the box. That's their whole modus operandi. So cool. Thank you.
Well, I can share with you the songs that inspire me list, and it changes every day. Every time I hear something I add it.
Like make like a Becca Stevens takeover. It'd be great. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you again for coming on. This has been great, and I'm looking forward to hearing those projects from Spain. It was Secret Trio, and what was the other one?
Mirrors is the new project that I did in Portugal, which is Justin Stanton, Mike League, Gisela Joao, myself, and Louis Cato.
Okay, and then there's the one with
we all-
the what was it called? Yeah,
And
the
then the
Secret
third
Society.
one- Oh yeah, that I'm still working on. And then the third record we worked on in Spain was my music with the Ataka Quartet, which is the Grammy award-winning quartet that my husband is in.
Now this is a question I was kind of holding back. What's it like being married to a Grammy winner?
It's awesome.
Okay, I only hesitate to ask because you said that yourself you're still looking to get one, and you should get one. Honestly.
There was a record I sang on that won last
Really?
year.
Which was
So,
that?
Finding Gabriel. Brad
So you
Miller.
are a Grammy winner then. Okay.
I don't know.
You should advertise that more.
Yeah, I don't have an actual Grammy, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's there in spirit. It's up in your
Yeah.
wall. Well, anyway, hope there's gonna be a physical one there in the future. Thank you again for tuning in with us, and have a good vacation. You deserve it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Talk to you soon, Thomas.
Sure thing. All right.
Bye.
Bye.